Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And here's, for some reason, a big one. We're going to be finally talking about the newest album from Falling in Reverse, called Coming Home. Well folks, we finally got here. We finally ended in the territory that I was dreading, but knew with Patreon it was only a matter of time before I talked about it. The sort of Warped Tour band dregs that came in the aftermath of the pop rock boom in the mid-2000s and haven't yet gone away or been cleansed with fire. You know this place, where post-hardcore blurred with all the trends of modern pop and rock and metal and even hip-hop that nobody wants to hear, to mutate into genres like crabcore, or electronicore, or deathcore, or a brand of pop punk blurred with screamo that traded insight or social commentary or heartfelt power, or even raw cleverness for pure obnoxiousness. And hey, can you tell that I'm talking about Falling in Reverse just yet? Yeah, just because I've avoided this band on this show like the plague before this review doesn't exactly mean I didn't know about Ronnie Radke's project after Escape the Fate. I actually had my first exposure to this group from seeing them, along with a lot of other horrible bands that I hope to never cover on this show, on Muse production show First Impressions. And characteristically, my first impression was a significant amount of revulsion. Yeah, their lead guitarist could pick out a decent tune on a solo, and if they could build to a decent, if utterly derivative groove. But Ronnie Radke's mugging delivery, in the sense that he bought into all the lyrics that he brayed, made him utterly impossible for me to like. At least when Fall Out Boy gave the middle finger to their audience on Save Rock and Roll, you could tell that there was craftsmanship in the writing or experimentation. Whereas, that same year, 2013, Falling in Reverse released Fashionably Late, which tried to pile in the synth against painfully gated drums, a ridiculous mishmash of genres including a lot more hip-hop than we otherwise wanted, and utterly insufferable writing. And well, there was a part of me that thought they could have been doing this quasi-ironically, sort of like what the alternative metal genre blend Icon for Hire did on their self-titled album that same year. Revisiting Fashionably Late for this review convinced me otherwise, rather painfully. Now thankfully, the band pivoted back to their blend of post-hardcore and pop-punk with their 2015 album Just Like You. Granted, that presumes you like a lot of post-hardcore, which for the most part, I just don't. I'm not as familiar with the genre, and what I've heard I don't really like. It at least felt like a ballpark where their sound and writing fit a little bit better, which they look to be abandoning on their very next project, which is going straight into pop-punk space rock. I'm assuming that's the only reason why somebody on Patreon requested this, maybe as revenge for being as ambivalent on that Starset record that I've already completely forgotten about, but okay, whatever. There was a certain morbid curiosity on my part on seeing how Ronnie Radke's brand of mugging would translate to the stars. So, okay, what did we get with Coming Home? Well, honestly, we got what I was probably dreading the most, the sort of half-hearted stylistic shift that not only avoids significant challenges to their sound, but also sands back any element that could potentially make this record remotely interesting for me. What's almost worse from my perspective is that it's not even so offensively bad as Fashionably Late was, or any Attila release. It's just stale mediocrity somehow trying to direct more attention to a frontman who has only ever been interesting when you want to set him on fire. It might not be the worst album I've heard thus far in 2017, but it's easily one of the most pointless, which might be even harsher to say. So, might as well get this out of the way right now. And as a vocalist and as a songwriter, I'm just not all that impressed by Ronnie Radke. I mean, I never really was, even from his work with Escape the Fate, but with his increased reliance on a lot more clean singing on this project shows exactly how he's being torn between three distinctive aesthetic worlds. Anthemic, theatrical belting that somewhat fits with the heavy backing chorus of millennial whoops and overdubs behind him, honestly a lane that he could work pretty well. Your standard brand of husky, post-hardcore clean singing to showcase his overwrought angst, and your standard brand of braying roars that remind you that, hey, you're still listening to Ronnie Radke. And sure, that might show some versatility as an artist, but it also highlights an inability to commit to any consistent emotional tone or aesthetic from song to song. You have him screaming his lungs out to convey his pain at being separated from his daughter on the opening song, and yet, after another song of fuzzy angst unbroken, he follows it with the self-flagellation turned outright aggression on the bridge of Loser. And what gets jarring is he's trying to to marry it to cascades of synth and strings and a crowd-pleasing chorus in a major key, none of which fits the content or the atmosphere. And that dissonance, it completely throws off the mood and intensity for a fair bit of this album for me. Because maybe it's just me, but songs called Fuck You and Your Friends, or I Hate Everyone, or I'm Bad at Life really don't fit by the numbers bratty pop punk that feels derivative of Sum 41, and especially with the added synths, Angel, and Airwaves, especially if they're all on these major key progressions. Of course, by the final third of the album, Ronnie Radke does take a pivot into some darker and arguably more consistent and interesting territory, but there's a part of me that feels that more than ever, Falling in Reverse has no coherent grasp on any real strengths as a band for them. A lot of this just doesn't come together, and sadly, a big part of this ties into the writing itself. And I think by this point it's fair to say that Ronnie Radke just isn't a good songwriter beyond the basics. Sure, he can write a catchy hook, but if you dig deeper into any coherent themes or ideas on this album, you see a lot of angst that isn't descriptive or rooted in anything that feels palpable or real, to say nothing of any sort of subtext. Part of this is because Ronnie Radke has no real grasp of subtlety. He's got no real story on any of these songs, so when we do get lines that aren't utterly cliche, they rapidly reveal some pretty noxious ideas. Or, to quote the hook of I'm Bad at Life, so don't hold your breath for me, but watching you turn blue would be comforting. Hell, maybe it's just me, but on a song where you're relentlessly trying to gaslight your partner into buying into your faux tortured angst, maybe you shouldn't mention in metaphor how much you want to see her suffocate. Or on a song like Fuck You and All Your Friends, maybe not such a good idea to express how much you want to slit this guy's throat. It doesn't exactly make you seem remotely sympathetic here. And speaking of lying profusely, then you have Hanging On, where instead of her trying to save Radke, he says that he's trying to save her, up until the point she shows up and wants a commitment, where he blows her off and then still tries to play the martyr here. That's another thing I find utterly intolerable. I know that Falling in Reverse's primary audience is teenagers and is trying to gratify and exacerbate melodramatic urges rather than say anything that might actually challenge them, but when you contrast it with ultra-sincere songs about missing his family, it sets up the framing where there's a complete refusal to take any sort of responsibility unless it's played for over-the-top martyrdom and self-flagellation, which doesn't make a lot of sense opposite antisocial, or in the case of some songs, outright murderous arrogance. Frankly, one, if not both of them, feels like a pose in terms of his artistic persona, and I'm more inclined to say that it's the angst. Maybe it's just the slightly buzzy vocal production, or because maybe some songs like Fuck You and All Your Friends or Loser bring out a visceral, if kind of nauseating side that feels a little bit more authentic in his delivery. At least the roots of his angst, and I don't mind in feeling that he's becoming like his neglectful mother, that has some weight and detail. But it's pretty paltry to come on one song before the record just completely ends. Now, one thing you might notice throughout this entire conversation is that I didn't really mention anything related to space rock or associated themes that you would expect for that style of music, mostly because that would require imagination or a diverse vocabulary in a lot of the songwriting, and that's not happening here. But it's more because Falling in Reverse can't even commit to a new aesthetic like that. Maybe they just got spooked after Fashionably Late, but why then only commit in some of the production and do half-ass with a few vocal filters and synths, most of which would have sounded overexposed 4 years ago? Hell, about 3 songs in, it seems like Falling in Reverse completely ditches the entire space rock aesthetic for some overly polished pop punk, including the addition of utterly flat acoustic guitars on I Hate Everyone, which don't remotely match a lot of the blaring synths that they toss in too, only to revert back somewhat later for the most of the rest of the album, none of which highlights an interesting bass line or a hook that feels distinctive, or drum work that has any real punch or complexity, or even a guitar solo that lasts more than about 8 bars. I can't say that it's all even that heavy to satiate the post-hardcore folks. The compression added to the guitar pickups in order to satisfy the anthemic space rock strips away a lot of their bite and depth for a lot of vocal overdubs, whooshing effects, jittery synth leads that never pick up any significant groove or potency in the melody, especially on the title track or Broken, and entirely too much reverb just muddies it all together. Now, the one notable exception for me was the closing track, The Departure, which actually anchors its atmosphere in a pretty tight bass groove, some smoky atmosphere that matches the sparse keyboard line. And while it does sound nothing like the rest of the album, or indeed a lot of Falling in Reverse's work, outside of the hook, it's easily the most likable track there for me, mostly because it opts for restraint and can build to a solid crescendo that earns a lot of the melodrama in the lyrics. Sure, with this production, it's nothing that Linkin Park didn't do 5 years ago on Living Things, but after the rest of this album, you know what, I'll take what I can get. But you know what? As a whole, this is the second space rock album I have covered this year in 2017 where I found myself really disappointed. Well, okay, not that disappointed. This is Falling in Reverse that we're talking about. I didn't really expect a lot of quality going in, and I didn't get a lot of quality. But even stepping aside from my own personal gripes, I don't really know who the audience is for this album, especially when you can only do so much more detail and unique material with a consistent emotional core, and you can find it elsewhere. The post-hardcore fans will find it lightweight and lacking interesting riffs or solos. Those into emo will find this kind of obnoxious, or at the very least blandly written, and even die-hard Falling in Reverse fans will hear a sound that's both unfamiliar, haphazardly executed, and done better elsewhere. And the stuff they do okay here that's outside of that space rock formula, they've done before. Maybe if you're crazy into Ronnie Radke's martyrdom complex and can stomach a lot of his douchebaggery, you'll find a few hooks that aren't bad. But beyond that, no, sorry, 4 out of 10 for me, and surprising nobody, I'm not gonna recommend this. Fans, you enjoy it all you want, but if I'm gonna find real space rock that's got some edge and power to it, I got an Arion record coming out in less than 2 weeks. I'm expecting that to be a hell of a lot better than this, and I probably won't be surprised when it is. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I'm surprised I had this much to talk about this album, because I really did not like it. But if you want to buy it, links in the description below, and I got the poll up there for everyone to tell me how wrong I am. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process so I don't have to talk about stuff like this, link to my Patreon is right there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for higher contributors you get to add records or even movies to my schedule. I'd like to see a few movies on there, it's been a while. Beyond that, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.